Hands of Love have obliterated Gambit. Here's the engage. Horror's gone over the wall. Red got it. Secures it. SK has Dragon number 5.
Froggen gonna get played in.
Whoa!
So much, wait a minute. He manages to get power of Eagle.
Rydal, Flash, Flay, Death Sentence.
Rain over. Bromacia. Let's take down some inhibitors. GG Fnatic is 2-0.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second week of the European League Championship Series, coming to you live from our new home here in Berlin, Germany. My name is Trevor Quickshot Henry. Alongside me is none other than Martin DeFicio Linger, as we ready ourselves for the 5 LCS matches on the slate today.
Yeah, and last week we saw SK Gaming, Giants Gaming, and of course Fnatic kick off the split here with 2-0 and looking very, very strong. So the pressure is on the rest of the league now here to catch up and make sure none of these teams get further ahead.
Well, let's take a look at the standings and where all of the teams find themselves after only 1 week of games. As you mentioned already, Deficio, Fnatic, Giants Gaming, and SK, they are at the top of the table, both of them with that 2-win start. Gambit, H2K, and MYM, however, are still looking for their first win. And Knowledge Bomb, they're going to get one today.
You are a very smart man, Trevor. Elements and Rocket, one-on-one, mixed performance. Week 1, can't really be too happy about it, especially the way Elements lost to Fnatic. Very big difference in coordination and aggression, of course, here. So they really want to step it up this week.
Yeah, they do. I want to talk a little bit more about Fnatic, as well as SK and Giants. Yesterday on Primetime League, Shox asked a brilliant question. Who are the pretenders and who are the contenders for the top of the table? You have to think that Giants are flirting with the pretender role a little bit. Fnatic, on the other hand, led by Yellowstar, who was the Week 1 MVP. Just phenomenal performance and great games from the team and from Yellowstar.
Yeah, Yellowstar is just so important. Again, he's the guy who's starting every single fight on this Annie support here. He's the shot call, he's the captain, he's the guy who picked the team. Everything is built around Yellowstar at the moment. So I actually hope to see somebody try and maybe target him a little bit, ban away that Annie here, see if he can play something else, or if he has the same impact on the likes of maybe a Janna.
Maybe we'll see him on something like a Leon if Annie's taken away.
Could be.
On the other side of the spectrum, you're going to look at the bottom of the table teams, Gambit, Meteor Wakers, and H2K. They all started 0-2. There was a lot of expectation and hype for some of the guys. The one thing I want to highlight is not necessarily their performances, but how important it is for them to pick up wins this week.
Yeah.
Because a team that goes 0-2 or 0-4 in an 18-game split is going to be so much more difficult to make playoffs.
Yeah, especially again, top 6 gets into the playoff here, and if you end up as number 10 in the standings, you are down in the Challenger Series. You're not going to play relegation here. So for these teams, if you do end up being 0-4, there's so much pressure on you here. Again, you're going to start thinking about replacement and everything. Like it's a terrible situation. I was 0-9 on Copenhagen Wolves. It's never fun. So they really need to start picking up some wins.
Yeah, if that were this season, that would be 50% of your games played.
We'd be gone already.
Next to impossible. Right, so talked about the table, we talked about the teams. Something else that stood out in my mind was the champion diversity from Week 1. We did see 40 unique champions played. 9 of them were available last year, but they weren't actually seen. The likes of Cassiopeia, Olaf, Hecarim, etc. You've also got Annie, Janna. A big one for me, the Siva and the Cassiopeia. You know, Cassio coming back. Last time she was in the meta was sort of Season 2.
Yeah.
And Sion with the rework, obviously, in the hands of Odawamne.
And also, like Cassiopeia here, getting a few changes to her kit as well. So there's been a lot of changes to the champions. The map, of course, is different. Dragon's no longer given the global goal. Open up for a few other champions. Right now, we see a lot of focus on like hard engage and these mid-game power spikes from certain comps. And we have a lot of different champions as well. So I quite like the current meta because you can play from Teemo to Sion in this top lane.
No Teemo yet. We did see the new champions as well. Azir, Nar, Kalista, they did show. The important one for Europe, no Rek'Sai. 10 games, 10 bans. We did see him pop up in North America, but not the jungle revolution we were hoping for.
No, well, at least in Europe, they still consider it to be the most OP jungle there is. And we saw also in NA, even though she had kind of mixed success, he only won 1 game. She's so strong. Her damage is great, mobility, you have a global ulti. You have so many things you add to your team as just one pick, and that's why she's so good.
Yeah, and the other side, Nar plus Jarvan, the Narvan combo. 5-0 between North America and Europe. And there's a great example of how the Cataclysm acting as terrain is just so impactful for Nas Ultimate.
Yeah, and again, also, you're strong early game, both champions, you're strong mid game, you're strong late game, you have a fantastic front line, engage, everything you need. Those two together should never happen. You have to either ban one of them or take it away.
Yeah, 5-0. We'll see if the teams have learned to take them away today. Talking about today, let's take a look at the schedule, because as we said earlier, we can safely say that either H2K or Meet Your Makers will be picking up a win, because they square off against each other in our first match of the day. Then the 1-1 Unicorns of Love will face the undefeated Giants in what I think is going to be a battle that'll give us a taste of who's going to control the middle part of the table.
Yeah, for sure. And after that, of course, we have Fnatic, who came flying out of the gates last week, 2-0, looked fantastic. They take on Rocket, a team we still have fairly high expectations for here and actually expect to be one of the top teams this year.
Yeah, they definitely need to improve upon their performance from last week rather. Let's take a look at some of the players who we'll be looking at as shoutcasters, and we think you guys at home should also keep in mind. We're going to start with Fnatic's new jungler, Reignover. He got himself a 66% kill participation, 21 assists over the 2 games, and really just very aggressive, very dominant, in your face. His Olaf and his Rengar really impressed last week.
Yeah, and he's also the guy translating for Huni up in the top lane here. His English is great, and he's just been a great addition to the team. And I'm talking about another Korean who sadly does not really have the best situation in terms of communication, is Rio for H2K. It's not working out so far for him in Europe. His mechanics are still great. We see him, do fairly well in the one-on-one, but he doesn't really add anything to the team game here. And H2K is 0-2 already. Gotta find a way to make Rio work.
Yeah, we'll have to see if he can get rolling. Somebody who got rolling last week, both games played on Jax, was Werlib, top laner for Giants. He was given basically a freebie in both of the games he was played. I want to see if he can maintain control and maintain the level of performance when teams are not going to give him that much freedom. Unicorns of a Love, I think they're going to look to shut him down, either take the Jax away or camp it.
They should at least make sure he doesn't have the same kind of impact we have seen beforehand. Now, next player to watch, Freeze. Coming in here as a new AD carry for Copenhagen, was replacing Woolite. He was actually the shining light for them in the first week. He looked very good on Kalista and on Draven, of course, getting these 600 stacks, completely insane numbers. I want to see if he can keep it up, because there might be a lot more focus on him and Unlimited here early on.
Yeah, definitely going to be the case. And of course, one last player to look at will be another AD carry, Forgiven. 0 deaths, a 450 GPM over 2 games. Those are some scary good numbers.
Yeah, the carry SK Gaming desperately needed last year. Question is if they deserve it.
Ooh, we will find out, I guess, if SK can keep that performance up. Contender or pretender? I'm going to use that line because it was a brilliant one.
Contender.
Right, of course, keep an eye on the standings to track those roster changes or to scan the schedule for the big matches over the course of the entire spring split. Head over to lolesports.com.
And of course, if you haven't already checked out the Fantasy LCS page, you should go do it now, because you still have time to draft and put together your dream team, or if you're very unlucky, a terrible team that doesn't give you any points. And speaking of terrible teams, Trevor,
that's a bit
how
loaded.
did it go in week 1?
That's a bit loaded. I prefer to ignore. I'd lost really badly, so we'll move on. And we are going to take a closer look at today's game, so let's send it over to the analyst desk where Shocks is standing by.
Thank you very much, Quickshot. I'm Efi Shok supporter, joined here at the desk by the Unicorns of Love players, Power of Evil and Visit Chachi, as well as our guest for the week, former jungler for Fnatic and world champion, Lauri Cyanide Hafanen. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining me. Lauri, what's it been like not being a pro player for the last couple of months?
I'm very much enjoying my retirement. I have a lot of free time to do whatever I want, mostly just streaming and doing YouTube, and there's absolutely no stress, so loving it so far.
Talking about stress, these two guys in the Unicorns of Love, you guys had your very first week in the LCS. Power of Evil, how do you reflect on week 1? Great Cinder performance, but Orianna didn't seem that on point.
Yeah, I just think that I didn't find my game in the second game against Elements. I had a lot of pressure on me. They tried to dive me nearly the whole game. I didn't find into the game, and obviously I can't deny I had bad Orianna ult.
Well, there's always next time, of course. A lot of games left to come. Visit Chachi, yesterday at Primetime League, we got to listen to your comms during a team fight. I gotta say, it was very, very chaotic. I don't know if you heard that clip, but how did that go? Because it seemed like nobody actually had a clear call, but you still made it work.
Yeah, I had the pleasure to listen to it as well. It sounded really chaotic listening back to it, but during the game we are so focused that we actually understand the calls. And if everyone just calls their summoners or anything like that, we know what to do in a team fight.
Yeah, and you actually won that team fight impressively and that game, so it definitely works. Cyanide, looking back at last week, what for you was the most impressive performance and why?
I think it must be Fnatic. Like, they have all these new members going in. Still, their team play was fantastic, and they have the language barrier. It didn't seem to bother them one bit. So I'd say Fnatic with the aggressive playstyle.
All right, you guys, after having played your first game and seeing the first teams, where do you think you can end up in the standings realistically in your first split, Power?
I think we can reach top 5. It depends on the next weeks. I think we will still try to find ourselves in the LCS and try to improve as good as we can and hopefully hit top 5.
Finally, you're up against Giants here in your first game of the day, and Werlib has been so strong for that team. Vizicachi, how do you think that's going to play out?
We will definitely look to give him less opportunities to shine on the top lane. So I think we will be able to handle him.
All right, we will see that. Now we're going to turn to you guys at home. Hop on Twitter and tell us what champion pick surprised you the most in week 1 and why. Cyanide.
I was most surprised by Gnar. Not because he's weak, but the opposite, he's so strong, I think he should be banned away, especially with the Gnar combo just dominating so far. So I expect to see some more Gnar bans.
Vizicachi.
I will actually say Olaf here. I didn't really expect to see any Olafs during the first week, and yet there were like several players bringing him in with quite successful games as well.
Well, I would agree the Olaf is quite surprising. Reignover played a fantastic Olaf, and I just think in general he's really strong. And I would just add the Cassiopeia, which is in this new patch pretty strong and pretty scary, so I can imagine there will be more bans on her.
Yeah, incredibly scary indeed. Remember to send your responses to @LOL Esports and use that hashtag LCS to stay in the conversation throughout the day. Now let's get into our first matchup of the day, H2K versus Meet Your Makers. Both teams looking for their first win of the year. Only one will find it today. Starting off with H2K last week, 0-2, losing to Fnatic and the Copenhagen Wolves, and especially that game versus the Copenhagen Wolves, Lowry, they started off so strong and they just couldn't keep that going.
Yeah, I think H2K had some problems with their wave control. Like, they were trying to force Baron when their lanes were getting pushed, and they really didn't get anything from it. I think in the future they should like have better wave control, push out the side lanes, then go to Baron and extend the lead to the enemy jungle, just ward everything and pick them off while they come. And if they don't come, you get Baron, and if they do come, they will lose the turrets to the minions alone, or at least lose the farm.
Vizicachi, would you say this problems with late-game decision-making, that's typically something you also recognize as being a problem going from Challenger to LCS?
Yeah, that's definitely a problem, but I think after a few weeks playing in the LCS, you can just get used to it and improve a lot in this situation.
All right, let's actually take a look at the lineup for H2K on the blue side. In the top lane, Odawamne. In the jungle, Lulex. In the mid lane, Ryu. At AD, Hjarnan. Support, Voidal. And their coach, of course, is Prowly. We touched already on the game and the late game decision making for them coming in, maybe focusing a little bit on individual performances. Ryu coming in as the new mid laner for that team. He statistically was down about 2.5 CS at 10 minutes on average last week, 15 by 20 minutes. That is not ideal. Power of Evil, what are your general impressions playing versus him?
Well, after I played a lot of scrims against him, I think he's individually quite strong, but in the LCS he couldn't show it yet. I would say that he has a lot of potential to show it in the next weeks, and I think he will be good. Yeah, he will be good.
What would be the main thing for them to change coming into this week, Cyanide, for H2K?
Like I said, the bad wave control. Also, the team fighting was poor. Like, Ryu was doing some really weird stuff with Cassidy, like going into aggressive or not going in at all. Hjarnan just not grouping. They had a couple of fights that they won, 4 versus 5. And I think if Hjarnan just had been there at the right position, they could have just cleaned the entire team and taken Baron or whatever, the decisive battle they really needed to win that game. So.
Yep. Turning to the red side of the rift, their opponents are Meet Your Makers. Let's take a look at their lineup. In the top lane, Mimer. In the jungle, Horo. At mid, Blizer. At AD, Mr. Owls. Support, Nisbet. And their coach, of course, Yamato Cannon. 0-2 the first week versus SK Gaming and Giants. They did have Blizer coming in there basically the day before the LCS started, so that must have been hard for them. What did you think about their addition, Horo, in the jungle? How did he fare?
Well, when he was playing Olaf, he was very unimpressive, invisible really, but with Lee Sin he did a really great game, keeping his team in the game. Even when bot lane got completely decimated 2 versus 2, because of Horo they managed to get some lead in the top lane, and that he was the only reason why they didn't just FF at 20.
Another person that we were keeping our eyes on was Mimer for MYM in that top lane. He had grown into this fantastic top laner who could carry the team. He didn't quite get going. And actually our featured matchup for the day is Mimer versus Odawamne in that top lane. Vizicachi, if you had to grade both of the top laners, how do you think that will play out?
It really depends on their mindset, actually. MYM was really solid last year in the LCS, so if he can just go back to that performance, he will be totally fine against Odoamne, who is a very aggressive player. So it really depends on how he approaches the game. For example, against Fnatic, he played Irelia and went really, really deep for Feb even a lot of times. So he needs to focus more on the game, and then he can maybe beat Bimer as well.
All right, we will see how that one plays out. Thank you very much for joining us. And with the stage set, it's time to send it over to the caster desk as the teams load up for Champ Select.
Thank you very much, Sharks, and congratulations to Unicorns of Love for a strong opening week. I'm looking forward to seeing them play later. Before we get to their game, let's remind us, everybody, it is H2K versus Meet Your Makers. We were talking about something earlier today, how Meet Your Makers are in such a difficult position. They're a team that lost their mid laner, lost arguably their star player 1 day before the spring split started. They were scrambling to find a sub. They had 1 day of practice, no practice time really, with Blizzard. And now at least they've had a week to play. But again, this is the most difficult situation any team can find themselves in.
Yeah, so basically what they're doing now is you're trying to find synergy, you're trying to find the right champions for your new mid laner and for everyone involved here. Remember also Nisbet and Horo are new guys on this team here. They came in during the off season. So there's so many things they have to figure out. And that's what every single team will do the weeks leading up to the LCS, where they don't have to worry about losing important matches. And now MYM has to do it while going on stage here. I was talking to them before the game. They don't really feel too confident. It's more like, hey, we're going to just go in and do our best, see what happens. We know we are in a horrible situation, and we just got to make the best out of it.
Yeah, it's such a difficult place to be in if you are a member of Meet Your Makers, considering all the changes, considering they lost Impaler in the off-season, and Mr. R's got that additional support to play with. The other side, H2K, in a sort of similar position, they lost Febiven to Fnatic, replaced him with Ryu, and they haven't looked as dominant. We'll see how these teams start to stabilize as we are into picks and bans for game 1 here of week 2. H2K on the blue side against MYM. There's that Gnar that everybody's been talking about, taken off the table instantly from H2K.
Yeah, and last week MYM, they picked Ari early for Blizzard in 2 games. Really wanted to make sure he had a comfort pick for himself. I don't think H2K wants to actually ban it away because he wasn't that scary on it. But if MYM has to pick it early again, you are going to give up a power pick here. We always talk about Gnar, we talk about Java and Lissandra, all these very, very strong picks here just to try and get a pick for Blizzard in this mid lane, which is a problem for MYM.
It really is. I'm glad you mentioned that though, because of the fact that Blizzard's Ari at least was better in game 2 than it was in game 1. Game 1, he was still trying to make plays, but missing those crucial charms and engages. At least he got some confidence after another game under his belt. So Azir, Zed, and Rek'Sai off the table. That is 11 out of 11 games. No European jungler, or Korean jungler in this case, has been able to play Rek'Sai in the EU LCS.
No, and I actually think she's going to remain banned throughout the day. When you talk to the teams, they don't seem to have changed their mind on her, even though NA had some mixed performances on Rek'Sai. But for now, again, we always talk about all these power picks. Jarvan is going to be left open, but because Gnar is already banned away, you don't care too much about him. He's still considered the strongest jungler open with Lee Sin and Rek'Sai. So H2K could set up for first pick here due to the Lee Sin ban coming in against Horo.
Yeah, definitely a possibility for H2K. Interesting to see them banning out that Lee Sin, because it could have been a consideration for first pick, considering how many games of Lee Sin Lulex has actually played.
Yeah, and it's actually been banned against him.
Yes,
in
countless
the game
times.
Yesterday, oh sorry, last week as well. But Prolly and company here, the coach of course. Let's see what they want to first pick. I mean, again, Janna would be open as the #1 support if you want her. Jarvan, because of the 2 jungle bans coming in. And obviously Lissandra, Kassadin. We saw Kassadin first picked a few times. There's so many strong picks up in the air, so MYM will be able to get 2 of them.
I really like the shot at the moment because you can see how involved the discussion is with Prolly. We've heard from multiple sources that during the pick and ban phase, part of the reason H2K takes such a long time is because of Prolly's input, because of his, decision making and team pumping.
So much info.
Oh, everyone's got a notebook now, so I'm not impressed by that.
Not that big of a notebook.
Oh, not that big. It's the size that matters. Let's see if it works out, because last week that Psy on top did not. Gotta call it out. It worked in the early game, but H2K ran out of steam. And with 3 seconds left on the clock, it is the Jarvan. It was anticipated, but you have to wonder, what else have they talked about? Is this Ari? Is this Lissandra? What does Yamato Cannon and MYM want?
So what you're doing in this situation for H2K, because again, there's so many power picks open, is you value, okay, how much do we think Jarvan can do compared to, let's say, if they got Kassadin and a Sivir or Janna being locked in here? Would it be worth it for us to get the #1 jungle pick? But simply due to them banning Lee Sin and Rek'Sai, and because there are more picks open again, Annie now was very, very strong last week. I think H2K made a good decision of picking the Jarvan. And obviously MYM getting Kassadin. Still not... So the thing, Kassadin, we saw him whenever he was blind pick. He was actually going to get in trouble because people would pick 2 lanes that were strong against him. He couldn't really go anywhere, and he was just forced to give up a lot of CS in this laning phase here. But normally, if you get a fairly standard AP versus AP lane with Kassadin against maybe Alessandro, he can actually farm fairly well in his decent enough matchups. Hi.
So after talking about the notebooks, Yamato Cannon with a brief shout out to his mummy. Hi, Yamato Cannon's mummy. In terms of jungle picks, Horo, his Lee Sin was banned away. Jarvan was first picked by H2K, and last week we saw him play Olaf for the first time. It was the first time we see it. It left a lot to be desired. We need to see a more aggressive, more accurate play on Rengar this time around.
Yeah, I don't actually like Rengar here at all for MYM. I think Rengar should be picked into comps where you can speed him up, where you have Sivir, where you have maybe a Lulu in the mid lane, which of course is still open for MYM if they want it, but you need something to help him move faster during his ulti so he can create a pick. Because the problem for Rengar is if the enemy team engages on you, you are more or less useless. Like, you're not going to do anything in these fights here. And you have a Jarvan, Annie, and Lissandra already from H2K. They're going to start fights against you over and over and over, which means the Rengar pick suddenly won't do anything. And also the reason here H2K can lock in that Lulu, get all the speed ups, take it away from MYM and the potential Rengar combo.
Well, we'll have to see how Meteor Makers handle themselves. H2K have got that incredibly aggressive, in-your-face, mobile team comp. Almost everybody with some form of speed boost or gap closer, with the exception of that Annie. And Kassadin's going to take a long time to hit a power spike. Meteor Makers have got to be very careful not to pick another late game, what we assume top laner. We've seen MYM play a lot of Mundo in the past. What is he going to play this time round?
I mean, he is against double AP, even triple AP if you count in Annie, so Mundo wouldn't be a bad pick here. Yes, Morel Nomicon is a bit annoying for him, but a Sivir late game has no chance of ever killing a Mundo. If you run straight into a phase, Maokai could be an option as well here for MYM if they want a tank. Could, of course, end up lacking a little bit of damage if they constantly get engaged on in the late game where Graves falls off a little bit.
And I'm super glad you mentioned that. Just to remind all of our viewers at home, we are on patch 5.1 with Maokai enabled, as well as the Zrot or the ZZ Rot portal. They are on this week, so we'll see if anyone wants to run them. Meteor Makers decide to go with a damaged top laner. It will be Rumble, in addition to Kassadin, Rengar, Graves, and Thresh. So very aggressive comps, actually, from both sides.
Yeah, like we saw last week, a lot of team fighting comes from pretty much every single team here in Europe, and it seems to be the go-to thing. Split pushing has died out a little bit. It's all about these 5 versus 5 here, around the Dragon, around the Baron. But I must admit, I'm not the biggest fan of MYM's comp here. The problem for Rumble, again, is a bit the same as with the Rengar here, is H2K has so much CC, so much hard engage on you, that as long as Rumble doesn't get down a perfect ulti in a choke point that basically stops H2K from running in, then he's gonna die instantly. Rengar's gonna fall with him as well. And suddenly it's all about Blizzard on this Kassadin here to try and clean up everything. H2K just have such a strong comp. You have the tank, the Jarvan in the front line, you have Lulu to assist him, utility from her as well. Sivir, of course, speeding up. We see this Sivir Annie combo every single time. You have great engage, you have disengage, you have good late game as well. I really, really like the comp here from H2K.
Oh, really? I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell. So, Deficio obviously feels H2K have got the advantage in this setup. You guys at home need to jump on Twitter, tell us who you think has got the stronger team comp. It says, of course, MYM. I think MYM on the Rumble is going to be an interesting one to watch. You touched on how he's going to need perfect equalizers. And last week, MYM left a lot to be desired. His Renekton was not good. And even though he played Nan was better, it wasn't necessarily game-changing. So there's those team comps again. Remember, hashtag H2K win if you agree with Deficio, or hashtag MYM win if you believe in the underdogs. Ladies and gentlemen, we are loading onto the Rift for Game 1 here in Week 2. H2K versus Meteor Makers. Both teams desperate for that first win. And let's see where the lane shenanigans play out if anyone wants to set themselves up. Mr. Ralls already moving towards the top half of the map.
Yeah, I really want to see if H2K wants to have just a standard laning face against the Rumble. The Sun can just constantly push him into the tower. And basically a farm fest just to pressure for Lissandra here. And obviously TP gangs are very, very strong for Odoamne in this case. For now, H2K, they want to get some deep wards in this top side of the jungle here to potentially spot if MYM is swapping around themselves, or where they at least send their dual lane. They were spotted here, moving in towards Yanin and Sivir.
So, Micho Makers, aggressive vision play, but it's very, very early. So
aggressive, and then yet they just stop at the river, actually. Place the 2 at the river and then back away. So because they were spotted already, first in the top side and also down around the blue buff, you can't really just blindly walk in. If there's 5 guys waiting for you, you might end up giving a first blood or blow a few flashes here. So decided to just place standard, fairly safe wards.
We need to see how they recover from that, or what the decision's going to be. MYM starting with the Doran shield leads you to believe they're going to look for the 1v2. It looks to be the case as Mr. Isles and Nisbet are heading towards the top lane, and no reply from H2K. Aggressive positioning there from Hyun and Voidal, but I don't expect that to stick. And we're going to have this lane swap scenario. We need to see who's going to apply more pressure in the lane and get the advantage coming out of it.
As soon as H2K spot MYM here on the blue buff, if they manage to do it, normally you would actually invade it on their blue buff, because you would then notice a lane swap going on here, and you would try and deny them for actually getting the standard 2 buffs here, take the blue buff away from them. But because MYM is starting on the Wolves together with Horo, H2K didn't actually get the information before they saw the dual lane from MYM on this top side here. Of course, freezing the minions. Early on, you walk down, you group all the minions together, so the focus 1, and you just start pushing down towards you. You can freeze the lane here, and Odoamne will have to run around with Ludex a little bit here to start.
Well, we'll see how that impacts him. Hyun and Voidal unable to do the same style of freeze because they opted to go for those Krugs in the bottom half of the map. But you've got that buddy system that we saw actually very frequently towards the end of 2014 in the summer split. And Nisbet still waiting for the involvement here.
Yeah, so the body system is just a lot shorter than it used to be. We used to see them run around to like level 2, level 3, top and jungle. Now, because again the XP range of minions were changed, so you can actually stand at your tower and still get XP, at least get very close to it. You can stay very far back. It's a lot better to actually send down your top laner here, try and soak up as much XP as possible in this lane swap than just running with your jungler over and over. So just the first few camps are being done together, and then once you decide, okay, do we want to go dive a lane, do we want to maybe send up Odoamne to the top side, joined by Volt to push it out, whatever the decision is, we'll make them split up and not run together anymore.
Well, it's interesting to see the difference in approaches. MYM has already left Horo's assistance from Micho Maker's side and heading to lane, whereas Odoamne, they stuck around for a full clear of the bottom half of that map, actually setting themselves up for a potential dive here. Let's see how aggressive Odoamne and Lulax actually play this one out, because it is going to be against 2 members of Micho Makers under the tower.
Yeah, and a ward placed by Nisbet here, very, very smart. They haven't seen anyone in the top lane. They see Voidal stay in the bottom side, so they know he hasn't recalled to join Odoamne. If they are going in, they are spotted as well.
Well, let's see how the CC can land. Odoamne is going to throw out their clutch. That's a flash stun! My man Nisbet knocked up in the air. First blood goes to H2K as Voidal takes another shot. They get the second kill, and summon a heal saves Lulex. 2-0. H2K are flying.
So because H2K couldn't get the freeze in the bottom lane, they didn't know there was going to be a lane swap here. They did the camps at level 1. They say, okay, we cannot give all this farm over to MYM, so we're gonna send our top laner and our jungler down here, dive them. Such a nice setup here, beautiful coordination, tanking the tower between 2 guys as well, and everyone staying alive. Perfect.
Very, very well executed. 68% of you guys at home are jumping for joy after celebrating that hashtag H2K win. Team comp votes, and you know that buddy system we're talking about to Fisher, that's the first time in a while we've seen a 4-man dive at 4 minutes that early on. And you were talking about this earlier today as well. Why are we not seeing it as frequently? Look at that tower's HP.
Yeah, almost dead here, but there's just been so many buffs to the towers, and it's become harder and harder again. Remember, there was the change here where the tower needs less shots before it does the full damage, so it's harder to dive them, it's more risky. But because there's so much CC, because there were 5 guys as well, they just locked them down and killed them instantly.
Oh, let's see if Horo can turn this one around. Remember, there's no flash on Voidal. Yeah, comes Horo. He roots Voidal in place. Voidal's got the stun down. The play from Nisbet's going to hold him down. Horo instantly forced to back away. Yeah, comes a teleport from Odoamne. Micho Makers are on the board. They've got 1. MYM is rooted in place. Death Sentence connects onto Yanin. He gets pulled in for a turret shot. Forced to flash before he gets away. Boomerang Blade does not connect. And it ends with Micho Makers getting a kill and a teleport from H2K.
Very important with the teleport here. Let's see, Blazer in trouble.
Oh, there's no mana, but he does have flash available. Blazer's trying to get as much distance. That's a flash ignite. Glitzerlance does not connect, but Ryu looking for a kill, doesn't work out this time.
Oh, trading summoners in the mid lane here, but very, very important for MYM. They forced out the teleport from Oduamne because look at this big wave here that's been hitting the tower. All that farm could have gone over to him. He should actually just have stayed, no matter what. Even if he picked up a kill on the bottom side, I think he should have stayed up here, picked up 3, 4, maybe 5 waves, stopped Mr. Riles as well from actually hitting the tower, and that would have given him so much farm. Instead though, because the tower is very low, they send the Sivir in the top side.
So Sivir's going to go try to defend that tower up top. I want to go back to that sort of Ryu play in the mid lane. Lulu against Cassidy could end up being a fairly passive lane one-on-one, but Ryu is one of our players to watch, and not for the best reasons. This is a guy who's got experience with Millennium, with Roccat, and with H2K as a mid laner. And truthfully, with none of them has he really lived up to the expectations. I mean, this is a guy that was in a LAN final against FLICKR over in Korea a while ago, let's be fair, but still, and he's not really demonstrated that skill level.
No, but as Power of Evil said on the analyst desk, when he plays against Rio, he realizes this is a good player, good mechanics, he's solid in the laning phase. The problem comes again when in terms of communication, synergy with his team here. That's where we see all the problems for Rio on every single team he plays on in Europe. He doesn't have a translator like Huni has over on Fnatic and Reignover. So he's left all alone at the moment. Lulex managed to get a big wall, might smack the Scuttler around a little bit here, get the 80 gold. Again, this is what we see from junglers a lot on 5.1. You do the Scuttler as part of your rotation because it gives you 80 gold, 50 from the Scuttler, 30 of course from your upgraded jungle item.
Yeah, and what we've definitely seen from week 1, junglers in the early game that have got control of both crabs really accelerate their item growth. They get to that 1, 2, 3 item breakpoint, you know, several minutes earlier at times. But you see Lulex, he's sniffing around, trying to find an opportunity. And we'll see if he can get a knock-up. Remember, there's no flash on Blizzard, but he does have that ripple.
Yeah, and H2K has really won out on this lane so here because of the dive in the bottom lane. They couldn't freeze the wave, decided to go for an aggressive one, and it paid off for them. And Rallis was freezing the top lane. Once he started pushing it down towards the tower, by that time, we could actually have Jarnan and Void, which just switched to the top side. Tower was already gone in the bottom lane, and overall, tower kills, farm as well. Very, very good start by H2K. I mean, look at Oduamne compared to Mimer.
I know this is very early to sort of go into story time mode, but if you go back to picks and bans, the first 3 picks and lock-ins for H2K was Jarvan, Annie, Lissandra. And if you look at that early game, the jungle clearing and the tower dive, I don't think it's too far to imply that that was a strategy that H2K had decided on the full jungle clear, on the level 4 tower dive, and they got 2 kills out of it. It was perfectly executed and perfectly thought out.
It was a thing they decided as soon as they saw the lane swap, and again, knowing, okay, we haven't frozen the lane in the bottom side, so we have to push it in. We don't want to give Mimer all the farm, and that's why they just said, okay, let's do a full clear together, go down and dive him. So yeah, just a smart thinking by H2K. Let's see, Horror on this top lane here, wants to go for that, but Lulex is nearby as well.
This is going to be a 3v3. Here comes Jarnan on the hunt. Cataclysm goes down. Lulex is going to jump into the fight, still alive, but going to get dropped in the last second.
Nice.
So it's jungler for support. Look at the equalizer from Mimer with his teleport, able to make it a clean 2-0 after it was Voidal that flash engaged.
And just gotta push down here, you gotta get that tower here, even it up 1 for 1, get the global gold as well, but nice little setup here by MYM. The gang actually, both junglers were sitting ready, expecting this to happen here, but it was Lulex who went in first, allowing Horror on this Rengar here to set up the counter gang, pick up 1 kill, get a second one as well with the equalizer from Mimer, pushing down the tower. So nice reply from MYM, despite the bad start. Definitely not done just yet.
Well, there's the replay of the engage, sort of the supports toying with each other.
Yeah, again, Jungler's going in, and because Horror hasn't shown himself by the time he jumps in, you can't really target him, and he gets just free time to lock down the target, land all his damage here, and just a good little setup with TP as well for Mimer.
Well, Ryu and Lisa going to trade some damage. Did see, for a brief moment, I actually pretty sure I saw Brutalizer in the hands of Horror, but it's not there for the time being, so...
He's upgraded into Warrior already. So
there we go.
Brutalizer.
Thank you. Getting towards the Warrior enchantment.
Yes, and should be going just full tank now, from what we normally see. Especially also because MYM, they're going to need Rengar to be tanky. If you want to build damage on Rengar, that's in a pure pick combo. You don't look for these 5 versus 5, no. You just want to like one-on-one, 2v2 people all the time. But if you want a team fight, you have to go tank after your Warrior enchantment. That's what Horror is going to do. try and use this Rumble here and the Graves for their mid-game spikes. See if you can win a few fights, get some kills on the Cassidy so he can maybe snowball into late game.
So H2K were the first team to make a play in this game with their tower dart. MYM responded with a good counter gank in the top lane, but because of Lulek's control of the crab, this is going to allow H2K a very easy, uncontested dragon at 10 minutes. A little earlier than we've been seeing some of the other games, but the lane swap control obviously playing into the favor as well. Something that I do want to highlight is because of that lane swap scenario, both of these mid laners have been non-existent in the engages. They've just been farming and fighting one another, and it's also interesting because both of these teams are dealing with fairly new mid laners. So it's quite an interesting story that it's of the team and how the game's playing out.
That's why it's good for both teams. Then you just have them one-on-one, just sit and farm, even it out. The rest of us will make the plays. We will force the fights. Once again, the battle for pink wards in the river. But we really have to highlight again, Odoamne is so far ahead compared to MYM in terms of farm. MYM had to teleport top lane before, lost even more CS in the bottom lane, only got 1 assist for it, I believe. So not exactly the best start for him. Luckily he's on Rumble, he's very, very cheap power spike, horning guys, and of course magic penetration on your boots, and then you're actually good to go for the mid-game team fights.
We'll have to see how MYM's equalizers play out. MYM was one of the top laners in the summer split last year that really stood sort of, he shone in his team when he was playing for the Super Hot crew. And he really, really struggled last week. His Renekton was not good. He did pick it back up with Gnar just a little bit, but I think there's expectations on MYM's shoulders considering that Corey, or Selfie, left the team. So we need to see how he picks it up and how well Blizzard plays on Cassidy. This is the first time we've seen him on that champion.
That's what we have to remember about MYM, or Super Hot crew as they were called last year. When they came into the Spring split, it was all about Mr. Rallis. He was the main carry because you had Moops in the mid lane, and MYM was just kind of getting used to the LCS again here. Had to really improve a lot compared to
his last showings.
Yeah, exactly, last showing on NIP, which didn't really work out for him at all. So it was all about Mr. Rallis. But then switching up into the summer split, when we had, of course, Selfie joining, MYM got better and better. It was all about the solo laners and Impaler here, trying to feed these two solo laners all he could. So the whole tactic was involved around them. There wasn't even too much focus on MYM because Selfie was just so good in this mid lane here and people wanted to camp him. Now, it's all about MYM and Mr. Rallis once again. And obviously that's why we see quite some ganks against MYM, at least when he played connected to the Jacks against Giants.
Well, we'll see how they can play the carry game out. Vision wars still ensuing around the Dragon Pit. Meteor Makers have closed that gold gap. They were around 1,500 down 5 minutes ago. They've closed that to about 600 gold. CS advantages. Top lane in favor of H2K quite heavily. That's sitting around 40 CS. And in advantage of Meteor Maker's AD carry, which is closer to about 30. And that's obviously just a testament of how those lane swaps have played out. So you see if Odoamne can make up for the weakness of Kianan, and the exact opposite for Meteor Maker's Mr. Rolls, the man on your screen, he needs to step up and try to help out MYM. Good equalizer will go a long way to making that work. So Dragon went down around 10:20, 10:30. We'll be up in about 3 or so minutes, roughly. And I expect Meteor Makers with a Rengar, with a Rumble, to look for an engage, but we'll see if they feel the same.
Yeah, I do like how both teams here put so much focus around mid lane in terms of warding, because they know there's so much pick potential on the side of H2K that H2K want to try and spot MYM out of position, and obviously MYM want to try and spot H2K to avoid being engaged on. Instead though, because Cassidy is sitting in here with his lack of wave clear, H2K keep putting pressure on it, keep pushing it in just a little bit. Teleport is ready for MYM though, and he's coming in.
Well, let's see where he goes. There goes the Glacial Path. MYM is caught out, but that's an equalizer splitting up the mid lane. MYM is the first victim of the fight as he gets silenced. Meteor Makers in full retreat, and that was just too easy for H2K. They locked him down and shut him up.
Yeah, so when you're basically standing 5 guys in the mid lane from H2K, and you know there's a ring on the other side, but you can see he's not on the flank, so you know he's going to try and engage through the mid lane, you're not really too afraid of him. So you just, that's the main engage from MYM. So as soon as MYM teleported, well, let's just use the Claw of Doom, lock him up, kill him before he can do anything, and suddenly you just have a free kill for H2K. And this is going to be the problem for MYM all game long here. There's so much CC and engage from H2K.
And to go back to the point you were making before the fight, it's about vision. If H2K can get control, if they know where everybody is, they're not going to get flanked. They can set up that sort of phalanx defense almost. If you can see your enemy coming, they've got the CC and the mobility to respond. Between Lissandra, Job, and Lulu, Siva, in theory, as long as H2K are aware, they should always be safe. They've grouped up and they're pushing top lane, looking to secure their third tower, and there's no one from MYM to defend.
Yeah, they know there's no ulti for Horo, so he won't be able to do anything against them, so they can just freely move around the lanes here, push down the towers. Last outer turret gone as well. Yana been part of every single one, I believe, actually, on the Sivir hand. We see a lot of European teams really use Sivir as a fast pusher in the early game, where, okay, you start in the bottom lane, take a tower, go mid lane, go top lane, and you basically just swap around the lanes, push them in very, very fast, chip away on the tower, and once it's low enough, you go for the final push, get the gold here. MYM, of course, wants to respond. TP coming in from Odoamne.
Well, let's see how Mr. Isles and Nisbet do respond. Moby Boots Annie, being played by Voidal, was coming down the river, but he's not going to get there quickly enough. So, Meteormaker's unable to reply the top tower. It's 3 towers to 1. H2K got themselves another small gold lead. If you look at your item breakpoints, Odoamne starting with an Abyssal Scepter against the AP. That's not too surprising. And the rest of the itemization is fairly standard. Nothing's jumping out at me at the moment.
Oh, I actually quite like the pickup here. Once he gets his hourglass, you have armor and MR against the damage dealers from MYM, and now they just need to go in and actually set up a few deep wards from H2K's side, so you can look for that engage onto MYM and make sure you don't get flanked around at all, because again, if they run straight in your face, Lolo, Lisandro's going to make it impossible for you to ever get close enough, and first guy jumping in, Lisandro ult in his face, he dies.
Well, that's the theory. H2K have demonstrated they've done it a few times already. And Dragon has respawned. Everybody's around this mid lane, as we talked
Horo's
about.
Going in.
Here goes Horo on Rengar. Look for the equalizer. It needs to be got. Like Voidal's caught up. He's going to stun Horo in place. Horo's going to flash away. There's the collateral damage on the sideline. Now Lulex is trying to play a distraction game. Cataclysm's up in the back, but MYM, they're in full retreat. Flash over the wall from MYM. We do see Riftwalk from Blizzard just to stay alive, and Lulex is running them down. He does not care. Aegis is zipping him up. Gonna snipe Mr. Isles in 2 relatively easy kills. H2K re-engage flawlessly.
So Horo actually managed to get at least a chance to engage here, because there was a good pink ward placed by MYM, so H2K didn't see him pop his ulti. But he only had to jump on Voidal, the support. He couldn't really find any other targets, and that's why H2K also could just turn it around. Let's see here, Blazer going aggressive.
Oh, that was a little bit close. Took a lot of damage. We did see the support for H2K in the mid lane, so they grabbed themselves a dragon. They're also going to grab themselves an inner turret and extend that gold lead to around 5,000. And that poor minion is going to eat a death sentence to defend H2K. So 2 dragons, 4 towers. H2K in a great position.
We just see it once again. I mean, and when they go in, let's just see. So Horo had noticed the pink ward he uses actually to pop his ulti. Finds out Voidal and Ryu. Goes on Voidal in the very end, but Yarn is down here on the bottom side. He wasn't going to be the target. Odoamne as well. Mr. Rod is actually caught out of position, so they can get him very low. And H2K, because they have so much CC and so much damage already, can just run over MYM unless MYM gets a straight up pick. The first target they jump with the Rengar, kill him instantly, then they don't have a chance.
You have to ask yourself, even if they did blow Annie up, with how split up Meteormakers were, and the fact that H2K's carries were on the sidelines, you need to blow up a carry. You need to get rid of a Sivir or a Lissandra before they can react to really get an advantageous position. And he's just going to be a stun bot for the most part in those team fights. So MYM just falling further and further behind.
Both Sivir and Lissandra are actually going to be pretty tough targets to get to. Lissandra can obviously ult herself and will outlast later on if you see the Rengar jumping towards you. And Sivir has a spell shield, because you know Rengar's going to throw his bowler strike when he's in the air jumping towards you here. So as soon as you see the mark above you and you see him flying, just kind of pop that spell shield here. No, obviously not that easy, but Yanin does have tools to avoid it here. And if someone gets caught out, you have Ryu with the wild growth here, with his shield, to make sure you don't actually die.
Really like the itemization from H2K. You've got that very early locket from Lulex, that Abyssal Scepter that Odoamne's Lissandra is setting on for a little while. And just really going to help survive the damage dealers of MYM. Yes, Mr. Rolls has got himself an eye edge in the Zeal, but he's not really been impactful because he hasn't had the time to stand an auto attack. MYM's comp is really going to be looking to use his collateral damage to blow somebody up, and even in that case, it still wasn't enough to kill Voidal's Annie.
Yeah, and he has to be very careful, because when you build all this magic resistance here, it means for H2K they can actually focus Mr. Rales, because if you kill him first, there's no physical damage left, because we don't really count Horo here on Rengar once he's already used his ulti, in terms of the damage he can do in a straight up fight. So it just simply means target up Mr. Rales, make it impossible for him to do anything in these fights here, because Jarvan is going to jump him, Sandra's going to go for him. and then you don't have to care about these two AP champions with all this early magic resist.
So let's take a look at how Makers tried to defend this one out. H2K last week against the Copenhagen Wolves had a commanding lead, and they managed to botch that game and give up a win against the Wolves. They need to make sure they can close the game out. We do see Makers, they're grouped up in the mid lane. They've got no minions to play with though. Onuwano's going to stick Blizer down. Now they've caught him up, he's knocked up, he's down. Blizer's out, now Horo jumps on top of Lulex. Lulex will be the next victim of the fight as MYM is going to overheat. It's not going to matter. Box comes up from Nisbet and Voidal is dancing around the outskirts. It ends up being a 3-for-1. And Makers just stuck around in the mid lane too long. They get punished for it.
It almost seemed like H2K actually didn't want to fight here. Odoamne with his claw pretty far back and was like, okay, Kassadin is here, I'm going to try and lock him down. And then, of course, chain CC, beautifully done once again. Managed to get the kill on Blazer. And MYM, I mean, they're trying to get some farm. You want to get that 2-item power spike on a Kassadin before he can really start racking up some kills so we can see Blazer going towards this hourglass. But let's just see it again. Telework coming in, and as soon as we see the disengage from MYM, it looks like Odoamne saying, okay, fair enough, we don't necessarily have to go in too aggressive, but because Blazer's being caught by the first CC, H2K can then take it and just start cleaning up kills once again. Nice stun coming from Voidal, of course, just the flip. That's the point of flick on Nisbet, 3 kills for 1.
Just so easy for H2K. The response that they can get in with Lulu's speed, Sivers on the hunt, they're just there in a second. So Ryu putting the hurt down onto Blazer's Kassadin. 0-1-0. First death in the game after that previous engage. And truthfully, not in a great position. We do see Ryu, and he's caught up. Does he have the support of his team? Wild Growth is out. Nisbet's the first target, gets knocked up. Ryu still with over 1,000 life is turning the hurt onto Horo. Now Rengar's in trouble. Smoke comes up for Mr. Riles, and Lulux slam dunks to force the flash. And yet another kill for H2K. Makers, they're just floundering. They're trying to make plays and it's not working.
No, they're just trying, they're just trying to get some kills on this Kassadin here. It's the only choice they do have, because you're not just going to sit back and farm for the next 10-15 minutes. You don't have enough wave clear on your combo. I mean, you only have Graves and he's too low range anyway, so H2K will always be able to push down the waves, get a few hits on those towers here, poke you as well. What poke do you have on your side? Rumble with his E, that's again basically about it, and then Graves with his fairly short range. That's the only poke you have onto the likes of H2K, so they can freely push down the lanes, push down the towers here, wait obviously for dragons. 2 dragons already picked up for them. It's looking great for H2K.
8,000 gold in the lead. H2K find themselves in a very, very good position. And remember, for both of these teams, they find themselves at 0-2 on the table. So this might be H2K's first victory, and it's been fairly dominant. But truthfully, Makers, other than that top lane sort of counter gank, they've not done a whole lot. All the engages they've tried, it's been turned around, it's been punished, and this engage they've put together just simply isn't working out.
No, and I mean, it's very important, I think, that everyone who's watching MYM and the EU LCS remember what happened to the team. Again, losing your mid laner just before, and this is not really
about... One day before the spring.
Yeah, one day. I mean, this is not really about your players. You don't really have anything you can do when your star player leaves the day before the LCS. So they're just trying to make the best out of it, and we have to give them time. We have to give them time to try and build up new synergy, find a way to play with Blizzard here in the mid lane. Like, what kind of strategy do you want to use? How can we utilize him here? I mean, they've tried Kassadin, they tried Ari last week, and he's actually farming well in the lane phase. He's not dying just one-on-one, but he doesn't really have too much impact together with the rest of the team, obviously, on the map, because they do fall behind.
Yeah, not at this stage anyway. Makers still looking to find that synergy that they lost from Corey, as you've highlighted. Rio, on the other hand, 2-0-3. A stronger performance, stronger showing. Not that he's looked bad, necessarily, but doing the job that is asked of him, been involved in half of his team's kills. And he's going to have a responsibility to keep everybody else alive in these team fights, run interference, and you know what? He's got the right targets, at least thus far.
And doing the standard Lulu build, where you go Death Cap as your second item, because you just want to get as much AP as possible. First of all, you're going for Lich Bane, as most likely your 3rd or 4th item, and that's where you want the AP. Make sure that does as much damage as possible. And then also because, again, your Whimsy, your W skills on AP, so you don't really need that early penetration too much. And just go for pure AP is the best on the Lulu. And obviously your shields and your healing from Wild Growth counts for more.
So, H2K in a very, very strong position. They stalled at this point against Copenhagen Wolves last week. Got to the inner turrets. They had a very different team composition, however. mostly with those tanks and lacking damage. Today, against Mecha Makers, they've got the damage. Now we need to see if they've got the ability to break the inhibitor turret line. There's only one inner turret still available that's up top. Look at H2K's positioning and warding, setting up both, obviously, for Baron, as well as that top inner turret.
And this is something H2K actually did fairly well if you look towards the Copenhagen Wolves game last week. The first 30 minutes, they managed to consistently start slow pushing in the side lanes, build up these very big waves you see in the minimap now, and then just move between them, taking down towers. They stopped doing it, though, after 30 minutes and just focused on the Baron itself. Now they've learned from it. They're still keeping the side lanes pushing while they're getting all the pressure here and the wards down in the jungle to potentially set up for Baron as well. So clearly been looking at the game from last week and knowing, okay, this is what we did wrong, let's fix it.
Well, Deficio did not care about that death sentence, and neither did H2K. Well aware the big item advantage they've got, MYM need to catch someone off guard to engage. Turret dropped to 30% HP as the minions are taken away. Odo1 is tanking it up. Lulex from the sideline. Voidal's looking for the stun. He's going to drop Nisbet where he stands. Didn't even use anything important. On the hunt is down for Sivir. They're going in. Odo1 is going to lock him down with that Glacial Tomb. Horo's trying to run for Dudger. Mr. Rolls is out. H2K, this is too simple. Mimer's overheating. It's not going to matter. H2K have got control of the inhibitor turret. We did see Blizzard get a kill onto Annie. He's on the board, 1-1. But it's too little, it's too late. H2K have got the turret, they've still got the numbers advantage. Let's see if they stick around and help Mimer in place. Here comes Horo, he's gonna leap in. The first victim of the fight this time around is Mimer. As we see Odo1 there get dropped in reply. 1-for-1 as top laners are down. H2K are still dancing and Blizzard's just too low to re-engage. H2K, I think they'll be happy for that. 2 for 2 plus a turret.
Yeah, of course, got the turret here. Opens up the base, making it even harder for MYM to defend next time around. Still, Blazer got his first kill on Kassadin. It's basically what they were looking for.
Game changer. Game changer.
It's what they were looking for
That's it.
10, 15 minutes
ago. The snowball has
MYM.
started. Now he's just going to do that another 10 times to make up the 10,000 gold difference. If you compare items, Deathcap, Athene's, and the makings of a potential Void Star for Ryu as opposed to a Seekers and Rod of Ages, Blizzard's simply not had the item that he needs or wants. Odo1's got himself a completed Hourglass, Abyssal, and another needlessly large rod. Mimer also falling far behind. It's just an impossibly difficult situation for Mecha Makers.
Yeah, again, right now you just gotta hope H2K makes a big mistake. Or they allow you to just sit and farm for the next 20 minutes, which won't happen. Again, they've learned from the mistakes they did last week here. There's better warding. Again, they're pushing the side lanes constantly and haven't just danced around the Baron yet. They're looking to fight, looking to push down towers. They know there's barely any wave clear on the side of MYM, so why would you just sit back and wait? So right now, for Mecha Makers, you hope H2K makes a mistake, like overdive or, I don't know, a guy walks in alone and you pick up a kill and buy a bit of time. That's all you can do. I do like, though, how they're constantly trying to fight for the vision in this jungle here, because that's the way to actually to create a pick. If someone face checks you and you're standing 5 guys there. But outside of that, well, not too much. We're going to have to see if H2K can actually close it out.
That is the real trick. MYM find themselves on the 3rd game in a spring split where they have been really bullied and controlled. Turret secured by H2K. 28 minutes on the clock. They're touching the top lane inhibitor. Look at that. Yana was quite far forward. Equalizer comes out. It's okay, but not good enough. Horo engages and instantly peels. Not the fight he's looking for as the slam dunk comes down from Lulex. First victim of the fight is Mimer. That's top lane is down. Top lane is down as H2K continue to chase. That is a huge picks onto Mr. Rolls. So 1 for 2 thus far as Lulex is in retreat. Gets caught by Nisbet. Now Horo trying to put the hurt down. Blizzard engages but can't find the kill. Tibbers comes out from Voidal. It's going to be enough of a distraction as H2K are now on the top lane. Lulex is low. Let's see if Blizzard can pick him off. Kyanan, though, untouched. Ryu gets himself his 5th kill of the game. That's unstoppable. Nexus turret number 1 is down. H2K have got minions to play with. They've set their sights on the Nexus, so there's no wave clear from Mecha Makers. Nisbet's going to be the next target. Is going to be giving up a kill to Kyanan. 5-0-10 as H2K drop the Nexus. They pick up their first win in the 2015 LCS. Dominating victory for H2K and a good turnaround from week 1.
And this first pick Jarvan here for Lulex really worked out for him. 7, 2, and 10. He had all the early kills, by the way. He got double kill from the first dive in the bottom lane, and he was just looking fantastic here, making sure every single lane got fed.
It just feels like H2K had a much better strategic plan coming into this game. Their picks and bans worked out. Their execution, the way they read the lane swap, worked out. And every advantage that they had garnered for themselves in the early game continued to the mid and late game. And, you know, a convincing end as well.
Just a great team comp here. So much synergy between all of the champions here, where on the side of MYM, it seemed more like they were just picking comfort picks, especially the Rengar coming in from Horror. We don't see him very often when he's not paired with a Lulu or Sivir here, because you need that speed up when you start your ulti here. You need to be able to create that pick where you surprise someone, just slowly run towards me. It was too easy for H2K whenever it actually happened to just react in time, turn the fight into their favor. So pick and ban phase, in my opinion, in favor of H2K, and obviously from the level 1, beautiful dive in the bottom lane, and just played it great. I mean, they didn't give MYM any chance to come back in the game.
No, never presented an opportunity. The only...
Didn't dance around Baron either.
No, no need to, actually. That's a good point. You know, and again, you highlighted multiple times, learning from the mistakes last week. Probably on stage there, we know he's integral in their picks and bans. Chatting away. I had the pleasure of working with him at Worlds, and he's definitely got a good grasp of wave management and playing the map out. And he'll definitely be proud to see how his team played the map in this game.
Yeah, especially, again, the wave management, how side lanes were always pushing for H2K, opening up, okay, do you want to go top lane? Do you want to go bottom lane? Doesn't even matter. MYM has to send someone to defend anyway. If the chance is there, we're going to go and just take a tower, we're going to take a Baron. Doesn't even matter, again, because we control the side lanes throughout the entire game. It helps when you are so far ahead of the enemy team. You can just take whatever fight you want to. But it looked good from H2K here, and we just have to say for MYM, 0 and 3. No synergy just yet here with your mid laner. Impossible situation.
Yeah,
I think everyone feels sorry for them for what happened.
That's the best way to put it, because again, it is very, very difficult. You know, in NFL terms, to lose your quarterback the day before the game starts,
especially if it's Tony Romo.
Is just to, you know, put things into perspective. I mean, Selfie, aka Corey, was really sort of their star player. And Mecha Makers are trying to deal with it. They've had a week and a bit of practice with Blizzard. We just know he was friends with Nisbet, if memory serves correctly. So
yeah, two Danish guys used to play each other, with each other, sorry, like duo queue. And again, Blizzard, he came in the day before LCS started. He landed like 11 in the evening. So he didn't even play, or in the night, sorry. He didn't even play a single game with the team before LCS started.
I know we've only seen 11 games in the spring split so far. But the one thing that continues to show through, when a team has a lead, they tend to be able to close out, with the horrible exception of H2K Copenhagen Wolves. If you look at every other game in EU where a team has gotten ahead early, they really have demonstrated a lot more decisive play in closing the game out. And H2K, this is a squad that's come from Challenger, that's, you know, even more notorious for not being able to finish games.
True.
29 minutes, and from pushing that inner top lane turret to actually closing the game out, took around 3.5 minutes for the guys.
And that's one of the reasons, is because of the picks we see, where you have so much hard engage that you can just dive onto people here and you can constantly pick them off if they do try and go out and farm, which means you just get further and further ahead, and in the end you're so far ahead you can just go finish the game. That's one of the reasons we don't see this two mid laners, Ziggs and Xerath, just sitting and like wave clearing against each other for 50 minutes. We don't see that anymore. And at the same time, Graves is being played so much in Europe. If he falls behind, again, your lack of proper wave clear to clear the entire wave, it will hurt you. Castellan obviously coming in as well. Once you fall behind, you cannot defend your turrets, meaning it's easy for H2K to just push it down, finish the game in time as well.
So H2K definitely demonstrating growth from week 1 to week 2. They now found themselves 1 and 2. Confident start. I think I'm very interested to see how they handle themselves, how they continue to grow, because this was a team that was very highly touted, very highly respected coming into the LCS, despite the fact that they lost Febiven. And that was the first time that we've really seen, truthfully, what we expected from H2K. They had a bit more hype coming into week 1, and this is the first time that they've lived up to it.
Yeah, for sure. But again, we have to remember they're playing MYM. It looks to be the weakest team in the EU LCS right now. But still, good performance, good early game again from H2K, and Lulix. He's actually been looking good in all the games he's played. Lee Sin is often being banned against him. He showed Jarvan here again, was the first pick with 2 jungle bans coming in this game here. And overall, they seem to know, at least from this game, they know what to do once they're ahead, and the pick and ban phase was great. Yeah, completely agree with you. We heard it in the pre-game. Defisho absolutely loving H2K's team comp. So for a closer look at that game, let's check in with the analyst desk, where Shox is joined by H2K's Lulix.
Thank you very much, Quick Shot. And Lulex, congratulations on that win over MYM, the very first win here coming in for you guys in H2K. Talk me through your team comp, a lot of confidence we saw in Fnatic as well last week. You guys just wanted to go in. What was the perceived plan?
Well, we wanted to have a good team fight comp, so we went for some like really go-in champions like Lissandra, like Jarvan, just to hard engage if we wanted to, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's actually take a look at it and engage from very early on in the game to our very first replay. Let's get that up on the screen. When you guys decided to dive the bottom lane, Laurie, take us through it.
So here, I have no idea why MYM wanted to lane swap this game, but it counter-fires pretty hard because, yeah, there's the dive. Voidal doing a really good flash in, Lulex just stunning both of them and they just get totally destroyed here. I don't know what is the Rengar doing, why is he not covering his lane? They thought they were safe as two, but
yeah, very
that was
well
not
executed.
the case.
Yeah, well executed by you guys. How much of a plan was this that was perceived beforehand that you knew we were going to go there for that dive a couple of minutes in?
Oh, as soon as we saw them lane swapping, we already knew we would go for bot lane. Because with Aniston, Jarvan, EQ and Lissandra stun, it's super easy to dive. So even if there were 3, we would have still dove, I think. But since there were only 2, it was just 2 free kills, like no problem. I don't know why there were only 2. Like Rengar should have been there, I think, but yeah.
After that replay, you guys were ahead again like you were versus Copenhagen Wolves last week, which was a pain point. Did anything click inside you guys from last week knowing that you had lost later on in that game? You knew you had to play differently?
We were not really worried about it because last week our team comp was pretty terrible against Copenhagen Wolves since we were running double tank and they had some hyper carries that deals damage over time, like Cassiopeia. So we have no way of killing them, so they just go through our front line super fast and there's nothing we can do. Whereas here, we just go in with Lissandra, Jarvan, and that's it.
Laurie, you were actually mentioning when we were watching the game that you felt that H2K really listened to maybe what you had to say in the preview, but I'm going to think it was probably in the coach and just the team talking about it. What did they do better in this one?
Yeah, you guys had way better wave control this game. This is actually like something you worked on. Like when you went to push top, you made sure that bottom was pushing. Unlike against Wolves last week, you were trying to force Baron, and all your lanes were just getting pushed, and then you eventually had to back because you had to defend the lanes.
Yeah, well, probably helps us a lot about all those kind of things, vision control, wave control, and also Ryu actually is super smart about the game. And since we got him here, we learned a lot as well. Like we just take time with him to speak English clearly, and he's super smart, and we learned a lot from him as well.
Yeah, it definitely showed in this one. Congratulations, the first win on the books for H2K. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, the Unicorns of Love will take on the undefeated Giants Gaming. Stick around, we'll see you in 3.5.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second week of the European League Championship Series. That's a flash stun! MYM Nisbet knocked up in the air. First blood goes to H2K as Voidal takes another shot. Odoano's going to stick Blizer down. Now they've caught him up. He's knocked up. He's down. Blizer's out. Now Horo jumps on top of Lulex. Lulex will be the next victim of the fight. It's not the fight he's looking for as the slam dunk comes down from Lulex. First victim of the fight is MYM. That's top lane is down. Top lane is down as H2K continue to chase. They pick up their first win on the 2015 LCS.